Hi, my name is Jim Smith. I'm a volunteer chaplain at the Harris County Jail in Houston, Texas. I've been teaching a series of lessons on Foundations for Christian Doctrine, and this is the first lesson in that series. I would refer you to the introduction to these lessons, and it tells you who I am, what they're all about, and some background about around these lessons. The first lesson that I'm going to teach is called Apologetics, number 1. There is an Apologetics number 2, which we will get to on a later lesson. I might give you some reason why we're talking about apologetics rather than doctrine. It used to be that I taught the lessons and started right out on the doctrine material, pulling out my Bible and showing guys doctrine out of the Bible. But it occurred to me that perhaps some of these guys don't even believe in God. So perhaps I need to address that before I pull out the Bible and try to prove everything from that. So I've developed these apologetics lessons. If you think about it, we don't want to go on blind faith. We don't want to say, well, Grandma told me there's a God, and so therefore there is. I want some evidence. I want something. If I'm going to have a belief in something, I want a foundation of evidence to stand on. So I have proved to myself, this is the truth, and this is what I want to believe. I don't want to be stuck on some conspiracy theory or some philosophy of man that's just someone's opinion. I want the real deal. So that's why we're going into some facts and truth here. And I want to start out by talking about worldview. We all have a worldview. We all filter things that are going on around us through this worldview. Some things go right through our head and we don't pay much attention. Other things we really latch onto because it fits our worldview of how the world is. And I want to read a definition for you, first of all. So what is a worldview? It's the sum total of our beliefs about the world, the big picture that directs our daily decisions and actions, a way of seeing and comprehending all reality, a pair of glasses through which we view the world. If I'm a Christian, and I am, I would believe there's a God. I believe that he created the world. I believe that he is involved in the world today. So when events occur, there are going to be times when I say, that's God. That's the hand of God there. I know what God wants me to do. It's not to do this. It's not to do that. He wants me to do such and such. So it influences me and it influences how I see things happening in this world. And I'm going to give you 4 very broad worldviews, kind of big categories. I would say that basically all of us have some form of one of these 4. We all tweak it a little bit to our satisfaction to fit our final thinking, but we're going to have some basic ones. So let me go through those and explain them a little bit to you. The first one that I list is naturalism. And naturalism says everything can be explained on the basis of natural law or science. The material universe is all that exists. There is no such thing as a soul or a spiritual realm. And some examples would be atheism, which says there is no God. Agnosticism. Agnosticism says there might be a God, there might not. I can't really figure it out, so I'm just going to ignore it, forget about it. And there's some human philosophies like humanism and relativism and postmodernism. that I won't even get into trying to explain those. But basically, I think the majority of the world believes in naturalism, that things just came into being, they have evolved. We talk about evolution. We believe that when we die, we're done. We turned back to dust. There is no spiritual things to consider at all. What you see is what you get, so to speak. The second one that I wrote down is monotheism. Mono means one. Theism is the Greek word for God. So one God. It's the belief that there is one God. And again, let me read my definition. It says, everything can be explained by the existence of an infinite God. He created a finite material world. Reality is both material and spiritual. The universe had a beginning, and it will have an end. And some examples here would be Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Those would all be monotheists. They believe in one God. And it says that we believe both in the material, and yes, I'm sitting behind a desk made out of wood. I've got ceilings and walls, material things. I acknowledge that they exist, and that there are laws, natural laws that govern this material world. But I also believe there is a spiritual world, that God intervenes in things, that his hand causes things to happen or prevents things to happen. And I can see the hand of God moving in things. And I believe that someday my spirit will go to heaven. I believe in heaven and hell. So again, that would be monotheism. And there's a certain percentage of us that believe that. The third one I wrote down is pantheism. Pantheism is the belief that everything is God, that the whole cosmos is one universal thing. I have read that pantheists would say, well, it's kind of like this cosmos is, it's like a dream. And there's no real material things. We just think it's material. My body really is just a dream. And again, I have trouble with pantheism and trying to explain it or even understand it. But some of the examples would be Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and New Age. Those would be beliefs in pantheistic beliefs. The final one I wrote down is polytheism. Poly means many, theism, gods. So many gods is the belief of a polytheist. It says everything can be explained by the existence of multiple gods or spirit beings who govern everything. Some examples would be the Roman and Greek and Egyptian mythologies, the Zeus and the Venus and the Mercury and all of those. I can't remember which one's Roman, which one's Greek, but anyway, all those gods, they have great power to do things, but they also have human emotions. So they get angry, they get revenge, you've got to be careful, that you don't lose your head because of what they're doing. So your view, if you were polytheistic, is there's a bunch of gods that I got to please, and I'm going to sacrifice to them, and your whole world, your whole culture, your whole life is built around pleasing those gods and sacrificing to those gods. Hinduism, by the way, is both pantheistic and polytheistic. Every Hindu family has a god that they sacrifice to. I have read that there are like 300 million gods in the Hindu faith. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I have been told. So those are 4 views, if you will, of the world or the universe. And think of it this way. If you're If you're watching Fox News on TV, that is a very conservative news channel. They're reporting the news, but they're kind of analyzing the news. But they analyze it through their worldview. So, for instance, right now, Donald Trump is the president. They're constantly saying he is the greatest thing since sliced bread. He's doing this, he's doing that, he's accomplishing great things, etc. If you flip the channel over to CNN News, you're reporting on the same news, but now you're analyzing it different. You're saying, and this is a liberal channel, you're saying Donald Trump is an idiot, he's terrible, he's ruining our country, and so forth and so on. Same news, but you're filtering it through a different worldview, and you see it differently. So these worldviews are very important. We're going to talk about these, and we'll come back and revisit them a little bit here in a minute. I hadn't given you a definition of apologetics yet, but our word apology comes from that. Not that it really has anything to do with an apology in that sense. Apologetics means in defense of. It's defending my faith, giving facts to support my faith. Not just blind faith, but reasons why I believe what I believe, why I believe the Bible is the Word of God. Scientific facts. And by the way, I was a chemist and engineer for Shell Oil my whole career, and I consider myself a scientist. So this area is kind of very interesting to me, and I enjoy it. I'm also, by the way, from the state of Missouri. Missouri is the show me state. In other words, prove it to me. So my faith in Christianity is built on proofs and facts. And I'm going to give those to you. Hopefully at the end of this, you'll say, I see, that really must be the truth. And again, when I say the truth, not conspiracy theories or some of the others, someone's opinion, but the real, honest to gosh truth. Okay. As it turned out, the question we really want to answer is, does God exist? But before I answer that question, let me ask maybe a subset of that, and that is there a creator, a designer, or a maker of the universe? When I talk about the universe and the creator, designer, first let me give you an idea of how big this universe is, because this creator designer, he took on a big task. And I asked my audience in the jail, I asked them, anybody know how fast a bullet travels? And it's going to vary depending on the size of the gun and the amount of gunpowder in the ammunition. But if you would take a sniper rifle, the bullet out of that goes about 2,000 miles per hour, which is pretty fast. I mean, I take a gun and aim at a target and pull the trigger, and boom, there's a hole in the target as soon as I pull the trigger. It looks instantaneous. It's not, but it's pretty fast. Now, if I look at how fast did the astronauts go when they were traveling to the moon, we find out that their maximum speed, they were traveling 24,000 miles an hour. That's 12 times the speed of a bullet. Imagine your spacecraft going that fast and hitting a rock or something, a piece of gravel. It will go right through it. You know, that's just hardly unbelievable that it go that fast. The fastest thing that science knows is the speed of light. Light travels at 186,000 miles a second, which is about 700 million miles an hour. You take a flashlight and aim it at the wall, and it looks like, instantly the beam is on the wall. In reality, that light had to travel to the wall and back to your eyes for you to pick it up. So it wasn't instantaneous. It was fractions of a millisecond, but it appears instantaneous to us. Scientists or astrophysicists and cosmologists, they want to measure distance in our universe with something they call a light year, because light traveling at 186,000 miles a second will travel 5.8 trillion miles in 1 year. So if you look at a star that's a light year away, the distance light travels in a year, that light that you're seeing was really generated 1 year ago. And we have, I think our closest star maybe is Andromeda, about 3 light years away. What you see is really 3 years old. Give you some perspective here. Our sun, which is a star, the Earth is 93 million miles away. So the light that we see when we look up at the sun is 8 minutes old. If you go out to Pluto, the light that you would see is 5.5 hours old. Our Milky Way galaxy, and again, growing up on a farm, I used to go outside where there were no lights out, and I could see the Milky Way across the sky, just like a bright pathway, if you will, across the sky. There are about 100. The Milky Way is about 100,000 light years across. There are about 200 billion stars in our galaxy. 200 billion stars in our galaxy. And there are about 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. That's a lot of stars. More than I can really comprehend. We estimate that the universe is 90 billion light years across. So if you start traveling on one side and go to the other, and you're traveling at the speed of light, it's going to take you 90 billion years to get to the other side. And even more fascinating, it's expanding, it's getting bigger. Partly because we invent these new telescopes and we look up there and say, oh, more that I didn't know was out there. So that's partly it, but the other fact is it is actually expanding. Most of you have heard of Albert Einstein. Early 1900s, he developed a theory of relativity. He was a very brilliant man. A lot of you remember his formula E equals mc squared, but he really developed a lot of stuff about gravity and time standing still if you get to where you're traveling about the speed of light. Albert believed that our universe was static, that it was stable, wasn't getting bigger, wasn't getting smaller, it was just there. And maybe 25 years later, an astronomer by the name of Lemaitre, in doing some of his calculations, he says, no, the universe is getting bigger. Albert wouldn't accept that because that really kind of messed things up in his formula. In fact, he developed a fudge factor to put into his formula to try to account for that. A few years after Lemaitre, a guy by the name of Edwin Hubble, if you've heard of the Hubble telescope, it was named after Edwin Hubble, he proved that the universe is getting bigger, something called the red star shift, which I'm not going to get into because I don't fully understand it, but anyway, he proved it. And for a long time, Albert Einstein would not accept that. It took him years before he accepted that it was getting bigger. And here's the reason, and I'm going to quote Albert Einstein. He says, no, not that. That suggests too much the creation. You see, if the universe is getting bigger all the time, there had to be a moment when it was small. And scientists begin to realize that. And they have come up with something they call a singularity, or we call it the Big Bang Theory. A moment when everything started. A moment when space was created, a moment when matter was created, and a moment when time was created. Imagine a time before time, if you can imagine that. I can't, but anyway, a moment when all those things were created would be the Big Bang Theory that astrophysicists have come up with for an explanation of things. And this bothered Albert because it sounds like creation. And Albert's worldview didn't include God. And so he couldn't accept it. It took him like 20 years to finally accept that. Not that he ever accepted that there was a God, because that would violate his worldview. And that's one of the reasons I talk about the worldview, because we have them and we just don't want to accept anything that disagrees with our worldview. We'll just kick it out right away. It becomes more important than the evidence staring us right in the face. Anyway, I say that, all of that to say we have a huge universe that's getting even bigger. Now, I want to talk about fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is talking about the intricacies of our universe, all the little observations, theorems, laws of the universe that all seem to go together just exactly right, very finitely. So if any of these things were off a little, we would discover our universe wouldn't exist. And so I want to talk about that. How do we get so fine-tuned in our universe? The first one, maybe this won't mean much to you, but I've written down a formula. This is the formula for gravity. And it's F equals the force of gravity. G is the gravitational constant. And M1 is a mass of one body, and M2 is a mass of a second body. And R is the distance between them. So, we know the Earth has gravity and it pulls on us. If you throw a rock up in the air, it comes back down because it's pulled by gravity. If you remember Isaac Newton, Isaac one day sitting under a tree, this is the story that it goes. He's the guy who first developed gravity, and an apple fell out of the apple tree and landed on his head. And he got to thinking, well, why did that apple fall down? Why didn't it fall up or sideways or something? And he began to calculate this force called gravity. So in Isaac Newton's world, that force pulling the apple down is F. G is the constant. M1 would be the mass of the Earth. M2 the mass of the apple. And R the distance between the apple and the Earth, surface of the Earth. So, 10 feet or whatever it was up in the tree. The G is a constant that scientists have calculated. And there are many formulas, theorems, and laws in our universe that have these constants. It so happens, in this particular case, this G constant, if it were off by 1 part in 10 to the 60th power, we wouldn't exist. The universe wouldn't exist. It would have either collapsed in on itself, or it would have expanded so fast that it doesn't exist anymore. There are many of these constants in our world that scientists have developed, and each one has to be exactly right, or else things don't work. And so again, I would ask, how did our world get this way, where these constants have to be so exact? If we're coming out of chaos and anything happens, you would say, well, why would they all be controlled so exactly? So that's my first point. I'm going to give you 7 points here, actually. There are more. There are at least 40. But my message is going to be, our universe, not only big, it's fine-tuned very exactly. And how did it get that way? Doesn't make sense that it would just happen on its own. The second one I wrote down is the mass of the neutron. The nucleus of an atom has a proton, and depending on everything besides hydrogen, has neutrons also. So you got protons and neutrons in the nucleus. And then there's an electron going around that nucleus. Proton is positively charged. Neutron has no charge. Okay, but it has a certain size. And scientists have found, all matter is made out of these protons and neutrons and atoms. Scientists have found that if the neutron were 0.1% bigger or smaller, we wouldn't exist. It would either, again, collapse on itself into a dark hole, or it would expand so fast it'd be gone. How did the neutrons of the universe happen to be just exactly the right size that they have to be for it to exist? And the third one I wrote down is our atmosphere. Our atmosphere, or air, which is roughly 60 miles thick, is 21% oxygen, 79% nitrogen, a few parts per million of argon and carbon dioxide and so forth in there also. But we find that if our atmosphere was 1% less, we wouldn't be able to breathe. We wouldn't have enough oxygen. If it was 1% greater, we'd have so many forest fires, it would burn up the planet. How did our oxygen in our atmosphere turn out to be 21%? Just exactly so it could support life. And of course, we know that it depends, the atmosphere of these gaseous molecules are held by the gravity of Earth. Of course, the further away from Earth, the less that force of gravity, so less air or less molecules are held. If you go to the top of Mount Everest, for instance, that's 5 miles, the oxygen level is a lot lower than 21%, you won't be able to breathe. You might be able to breathe for a little while, but you won't make it very long at that level. So we have a thin atmosphere, as I said, only about 60 miles. And those oxygen and nitrogen molecules are held by the gravity of Earth. The Earth has to be just the right size to end up with 21% oxygen. Not only that, the atmosphere filters out a lot of rays, cosmic rays, X-rays from out in outer space. It filters those out so they don't get to us. If those rays would get to us, it would destroy us. We'd be full of cancer or whatever. We wouldn't be able to make it. It does let through the visible radiation, the rays that cause us to see red and blue and green and so forth. It lets through the visible light. And that's important because plants need visible light for photosynthesis. Without that light, there would be no photosynthesis, there would be no plants, and if there's no plants, there's not going to be any animals. We wouldn't exist. So how did it happen to be that our atmosphere is just right so that it removes all the dangerous radiation and yet lets the good radiation come through? How did that happen? I want to mention the moon also. I'll show you a globe here. This globe, you see the equator, and you notice it's tilted. It's not straight across and level like that. It's tilted 22 degrees. And that's significant. If the Earth were flat like this, the equator was, just one way around 100, well, what do I say? Flat, I guess, is my best description of it. The sun shining out here. Let's see if my fist is going to represent the sun. The sun would shine directly on it. It would be so hot here that you couldn't live. It would be so cold in the North and South Pole you couldn't live. It'd just be a band a little ways around here that you could live. That'd be the only temperatures that you could live on. So what's happened is the moon has a gravitational pull also, and it pulls the Earth and tilts it 22 degrees. And what does that mean? Well, what happens now is when it's tilted, let me show you again. When it's tilted, if the sun is over, I get my fist right, sun is here, it's shining up at the North Pole. The North Pole is closer, so we have something called summertime. And down at the South Pole down here, it's away from the sun. We have something called wintertime. When we get it the other way, and the South Pole is now closer to the sun, we have summertime there and wintertime up at the North Pole. So we have a tempered climate. And what that means is we have seasons, and the temperature on the planet changes enough that it doesn't get extreme. And we are able to live over the whole planet rather than just some band north and south of the equator. So we're able to live over the whole planet. And how did the moon happen to be just the right size, just the right distance away to pull the Earth just 22 degrees so that it would tilt the right amount? If it's tilted less or more, it destabilizes, and we end up back with too many hot or cold spots. And how did it happen to be the moon is just exactly right? So that's another gee whiz number. Our distance, the Earth's distance from the sun, means that water is liquid. The temperature is just right for water to be liquid. If it was 212 degrees or higher, it would be a gas. If it was 32 degrees or below, it would be a solid. If you're out on Mars, water is ice. Why is that significant? Well, we wouldn't have any lakes, rivers, oceans. Plants wouldn't be able to exist because they need liquid water. And we wouldn't be able to exist very easily either. I guess we could melt ice. We wouldn't be able to cool down steam very well. But it's important that we have liquid water. And how did our Earth happen to be just the right distance from the sun so that we end up with liquid water on the Earth? The large planets, this is my last point, the large planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, which are further out in our solar system, they have huge gravity fields. When debris from outer space comes into our solar system, it goes to those large planets, the asteroids and the rocks and so forth. They go to the large planets because it pulls them. They don't get inside to Earth. Well, maybe a little dust or something. We have, meteorites or meteors. We might see a shooting star once in a while when it comes down. But all those bigger materials go to the large planets, and the large planets protect us from all that debris. Otherwise, we'd have big craters and explosions, and it would destroy life on Earth. So that's 7, what I call fine-tuning facts about our universe and about our Earth, about life on Earth, that we begin to say, how did those all happen to be? How they wouldn't just come out of chaos and just poof. There's evidence. It is evidence that we have a creator or designer, some being that said, I'm going to make it this way, and it has to be this way or it won't exist. And so he fine-tuned it that way. And we're going to get into more of that in our second lesson on apologetics. I do a couple things I want to show you. My material, I didn't just make all this up. I've read some books and done some work on the internet. One of the books that I used is by Mark Cahill, called One Heartbeat Away, Your Journey into Eternity. And he talks about a lot of this apologetics material. Another one is by Dr. Melissa Cain Travis, Science and the Mind of the Maker. Dr. Travis was a professor at Houston Baptist University. I guess it's Houston Christian University now. I think she's moved on to Colorado somewhere, but she, again, wrote about apologetics. And actually, she has quite a bit of material in here about DNA and the intricacies of DNA, that it just wouldn't happen. It's so well designed. The odds are astronomical for it to just have happened. Now, I didn't go into DNA because it's a little bit more difficult to understand, and so I haven't really used that material. But again, there's lots of stuff out there to show us that there is a creator designer of the universe. And I'm going to end now. The next lesson will be apologetics number 2. Thank you.